You're Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651 645 2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite podcast, You're Free to Go. We hope you've been enjoying our 4-part non-client guest series. Today, we're interviewing our 4th guest. Her name is Lynn Ehrenberg. She is a PR expert. She handles public relations for every scenario you can imagine, including she's very involved at a super, super high level, managing PR in the world of politics and government. There's really nothing she hasn't done in the world of public relations. We're going to focus today as much as possible, because her experience and expertise is so broad, we're going to try to really narrow in on her connection to the criminal world. And she has this perspective from public relations from the prosecutor side, as well as from the criminal defense side. So it's a unique perspective that Lynn brings to our show today. And I've known her a while and have worked with her over the years. She's truly a genius strategist, which strategy is probably one of the most important, that in relationships, to making such a really good public publicist or public relations expert. So she's handled all stages of criminal cases, and she's also really sharp when it comes to crisis communication strategy, or as a strategist for crisis communication. For example, when they get arrested and you need some immediate crisis management, how do you strategize that? And how do you implement a policy to protect someone's image and reputation when it's blasted all over the news upon their arrest? So we're going to get into all of that today. Marc is streaming in from LA. We miss him so much in the studio, but look forward to him being here next week for our next episode. Marc, how's everything in LA today?
Perfect. Beautiful sunny day.
I get
And
jealous every time you tell me that. Yeah. I think we're both super excited about this episode because as we were talking offline before we went live, started recording our episode, we were talking to Lynn about our high profile cases always involve the media. And we've had a lot of high profile cases, and that adds a whole nother dimension to and complicates our ability to defend our clients. It adds a whole nother type of strategy and pressures on the prosecutor when public cases are in the news and so forth. So this is one of these episodes where you and I are going to really enjoy it as much as our listeners, because we're all going to learn a lot from Lynn. And although I could spend the next couple hours reading off her resume, all I'm going to say is the viewers, when they hear you today and they see you, if they're coming in on YouTube, they will realize it'll be clear as crystal to them that you are literally the GOAT of PR. And so it's a huge honor. I do want to mention 4 things that may not even be on your resume, or CV as professionals call it, that for me help make you a really good public relations expert for criminal cases. One is that you have built a media relationship worldwide. Your relations with media is worldwide, and that's, to me, what's so interesting is that all began early in your adult career when you were an NFL cheerleader for the Miami Dolphins and a spokesperson for the Miami Dolphins, which help you build media relationships around the world, which for cases when Marc and I have that are internationally renowned, that's very helpful to us. You also, of the 4 topics, number 2 is, to me, is that you were married to a state attorney. Dave Ehrenberg was state attorney for 8 years. People know that as a DA or district attorney in Florida. They're called state attorney. It's the elected prosecutor. He was an 8-year prosecutor. So while married to him, you saw that side of it, which is very helpful to us. And anyone out there, if you want to Google Lynn, they got divorced, and it was labeled the Trump divorce. So maybe we'll get into it today in our episode, but you'll find that very interesting if you look up that. And that is the epitome of good public relations on Lynn's part. Number 3 is that you have served on a number of juries, and that gives you a great insight to what we need when we're doing publicity on cases. You've actually served in 3 different counties, so you've seen what goes on in these 3 different counties during jury selection, and you can put yourself in the shoes of a juror, which helps us with our public relations because we're putting information out there that might be seen or heard by future jurors in our cases. And finally, you have the perspective of you were a key witness in a public corruption case that I actually represented you on. So full disclosure, just for in case anyone's confused, not as a criminal defendant, but as a witness for the government. So you saw that side of it too, is what it's like to be a witness for the government. The defense was thinking that you were also a witness for them. So you were kind of being ping pong back and forth as a key witness in a public corruption case. Again, I could go on, but I know the audience would rather hear from you than from me. So let's get started right now. And I welcome you to our show, Lynn Ehrenberg.
Well, thank you for having me. That was quite the introduction. So I'm happy to be here.
It was my pleasure. It was actually easy because you're just so great at what you do. It just was a free-flowing introduction. I could go on, but I think we'd really want to get to the show. Yeah, so I'm glad you're here. It's a good opportunity for the audience to hear about public relations. I want to start with something that is, hopefully it doesn't, embarrass you in any way, but when we were talking the other day, you showed me a text message that really explains why publicity and PR is so important. It was a text message from our president, Donald Trump's son, from Don Jr., and he said, "Don't get on bad side of a publicist." And you're like, yeah, he understands the power of PR.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised with his response. I thought he would get a chuckle out of it because it was an article that I had secured in the New York Post, and it was about a client of mine who had watches, and I was able to spin the story into the watches were for certain NFL teams that you like, if you like the Jets or you like the Dolphins. And the Post wrote an article, and basically it ended up being that my ex-husband, Dave Ehrenberg, likes the Dolphins, and I now have switched from the Dolphins, because I was a cheerleader, to the Jets. Why this was a story? Well, they had a PR person behind it. And so then I was able to plug my clients' watches. And from there, it went on to this whole tangent about Dave with the Dolphins being upset that I like the Jets now. Don Jr. thought this was hilarious and couldn't believe I gather from that article. That's why he's like, don't ever, ever, ever mess with a PR person, because they can literally make anything happen
Right.
out of nothing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Now that we know that you're a lover of lost causes by being a Jet fan,
That's right.
'cause I've been a Jet fan my whole life, and it's been frustrating. So we don't even need to get into that.
Well, I learned a lot about that because that client of mine who made the watches was the official
Right.
sponsor of the Jets. So I really had to go deep into the whole Jet situation, and I fully understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Fully.
But Lynn, while we've got you here, something that I'm sure all our listeners want to hear about, and I'm anxious to learn, is when you are representing an individual who's accused of a really major, heinous crime, something that is controversial, and the person is really being painted with a horrible brush in the media, how do you deal with that? What can you do to help that person?
Well, I think you have to be very strategic. It depends a lot on what's already out there.
Wait, before you really answer that,
What?
I want you to go the day before, okay? The day before that person gets arrested, or the month, or the weeks. Marc, Lynn and I had a really interesting conversation. We were in a meeting yesterday, totally unrelated to the podcast and our law firms, and we started talking about this. And why don't you discuss what you like people to do in advance?
Like anyone.
Right, like anyone.
Right. So I think everybody should have a crisis communications plan, a personal one, as well as a professional one if you run a business. But if you have a plan in place, like it's the new year right now, everybody's they're making vision boards and New Year's resolutions on what they want to accomplish. Well, what if something didn't go your way? And I was telling Guy yesterday that I've always had a plan for myself. Should this happen, then this is what I want to happen. So, for example, if I ever get arrested, I had on a drive all the information about me and how I thought I could get out of jail, and I sent it to my dad. I'm like, Dad, if anything should happen to me, you take this drive. And I gave him the list of the people to send it to. because I anticipated what could possibly happen, because I'm not always concerned about going to jail. But at that time in my life, that was the situation that I was starting to sense things. So depending on your circumstances, what could happen? Do you know the current law about if you get pulled over for a DUI? Because I'm not sure, something might have changed with that.
Right.
Do you know that if a private investigator is following you, you make 3 right turns, and that's how you test to see if somebody's following you or not?
But I think you also said yesterday you would actually have some media representatives in your list.
Oh, yeah.
Notify, Bill Jones at ABC, notify Diane Johnson at CBS.
They wouldn't be random,
Right.
They would be my friends in the media.
Presenting a positive story or something positive about you immediately in the media?
Yes.
To
counteract the legal, whatever was happening to me legally. So, and they would highlight it that Lynn Ehrenberg is in jail for this, and why is she in jail? And I would let my dad let them know, because it would already be drafted in advance.
Right, you're drafting the press release before.
Right, and I'm like, Dad, do not lose this. I'm telling you, if anything, you go. This is who you give it to.
Right.
And I knew that those people would know something was up.
Right.
And they would at least investigate it, find out, write about it.
Okay, so let's say, which most people don't, say they don't have this, in advance. Marc calls you, I call you, we just, president of this company, CEO of this big company, actor, athlete, he's in handcuffs, they're taking him away right now. Boom, what do you do? What do you
Well, those people, anybody at that level should already have a crisis communications plan, like everybody.
Right.
No, and I'm sure they do, especially celebrities and high-level people. If they don't, then they need to call their lawyer.
Right. No, we're the lawyer calling you now. So we need help.
Or like you had mentioned before, that a lot of times they have a PR team that they already have, right? That then the lawyer works with that team, correct?
Yeah, that's often the case.
So what I think would be of value is, in addition to that PR team that's kind of already drinking the Kool-Aid, already doing what that celebrity says, it's not a bad idea to bring somebody outside in who can work well with others, but see it more objectively.
Right. And what if it's a local doctor who's not a famous person, but he's local, very well respected, gets pulled over for DUI one night or domestic battery, and we know that the news is going to run the report of the arrest. You have to call the press and talk to them, because I had mentioned this before. My very, very first lesson in PR, when I got my first job, I met a very high-profile investigative journalist. Everybody was scared of this guy, and he became my friend. And he told me, he said, Lynn, journalists have a job to do. They have a boss. They have an editor. They have a publisher. They're writing that story, whether you want to or not. It's to your advantage to take that call and talk to me in his situation and say something. Because if you don't, we're going to dig and write whatever we want, or whatever the other side said. Right.
So with the doctor example, you call that reporter if they didn't call you, and you say, look, this is what happened, this is from that perspective, and let him at least do a follow-up story and say that side.
Right. I remember the words that you used was, don't run from us. That's what the media says. Don't run from us.
Don't hide.
Right.
Don't dodge them.
So many times you see, I'm sorry for interrupting you, being remote, it's a little hard. Often you see a news story written, and they say, we tried to reach the left word with the defense attorney, left word with the defendant or whatever, and nobody's gotten back to us. So it's your advice then that the defense always speaks to the media who's writing the initial story if they reach out?
Absolutely. And when you speak to them, that doesn't mean, you as long as you call them and you talk to them and you give them, even if it's something generic, because legally there's an issue there, you're showing that you're available to talk to them. You want the reporter to like you. Most importantly, you want them to like you. You don't want to give them any more reason to not like you. They will 1,000% change that little bit of a nuance in that article if they like you. You build a relationship with them, even if you're like, look, I can't get into the details, you know that, but what I can say is this. A good example is recently with Reiner, that Reiner case. Sure. That attorney immediately before he dropped him went addressed the public and kind of planted seeds, but didn't give a lot of information. But his point was, before we all publicly prosecute him, before there's any information, and his wording and the way what he said and how he said it was very well done.
Right. You really have to craft these statements very carefully.
Yep.
You referenced, lawyers legally. So I do want to kind of fill our listeners in. There is case law out there that says a lawyer cannot try their case in the media. So it's a fine line, a tightrope that we have to walk. But I do agree with you. I think ignoring is not the answer either. Often just saying, we look forward, our client is maintaining his innocence. We look forward to the evidence coming out in court, and we will be there and fight this case vigorously, or something generic, but yet at least it's somewhat responsive. The other thing we have to think of as lawyers is I've heard lawyers give statements. Look, they just want to get on the news and get some fame, I guess. But they'll say statements, my client didn't do this, he's not guilty. And they set the bar so high that there's no way they're going to live up to it, and it's all going to totally backfire on them. So strategically, not only do we have to, when we give a statement, think about the rules about not trying your case in the media, but we also have to think about the statement, not that it won't hurt our case in the long run, So
so you're the lawyer, there's the client. Can the client hire a PR agency separately from you?
Right. So
then you don't get in trouble?
Right. Well, there's no attorney-client privilege if the defendant hires the PR agency directly. So really, they need to hire the criminal defense lawyer, and that makes the attorney-client privilege attach, confidentiality then attaches, and the criminal defense attorney then hires the public relations expert in order to be part of that circle of attorney-client privilege.
So I had a client once, and she was involved in a very high-profile case. And what she did is she had her lawyers, but then she hired me under the guise of publicizing her podcast. So her lawyers wouldn't be mad, excuse me. But to be honest, she also said it's because she wants to get her name out there, sway the potential jury or judge or whatever, and she doesn't want to tell her lawyers.
Right.
So,
well, she can't get in trouble for that, but the lawyer, if they were behind the scenes orchestrating it and there's evidence of that, they could get in trouble.
Right. So, and my job is to make sure, first and foremost, that the lawyers do what they need to do and I don't need to get involved and have my client hurt in any way legally. So what I did in that situation is I was like, you know what we need to do? Pivot and just talk about how you love animals. We're going to start a nonprofit. We're going to do good in the community. Nothing to do with any of that stuff. I can't imagine your lawyers being mad that you're saving animals. And right. That's what we did.
Yeah, well,
you pointed out a very, very good point, which is that while we're prohibited from trying our case in the media, there's no prohibition from humanizing or portraying our client as all of their good acts, their charitable acts, their community acts in the media, especially when, you have a very high profile case where the media is literally banging on your client daily. I remember in the Rothstein case, there was literally an article in the Sun Sentinel every day for a year, at least a year. So yep. Of course, that case, we didn't have anything really to work with positively. But the point is, what you did and what your client asked you to do is exactly appropriate. Even the lawyer can be involved in that. I don't think the lawyer has any prohibition against humanizing your client and laying out stories there in the media or talking to the reporters about things about your client, just not the specifics right. about the case.
And it's a bit psychological too. So I'm talking to my client who naturally she's very caught up in her case. It's very troubling and taxing and hard on her. And I was like, look, let's just call her Anne. Anne, your identity is more than just this. Your lawyers are the best and they're handling this for you. Let's think about what you care about, what you're passionate about, and what will be great for the community, and you can switch gears. Let's file your nonprofit. Let's come up with a name. She ended up being in the cover of a local magazine about helping animals, having nothing to do with that. So it was to help her emotionally, it was to help her image, and it was to help her really, I tried to extract what she really did care about and build parallel to what she was doing over here.
Right. You're bolstering her credibility in the community, and all that is obviously going to help her long term. I think you're right. We were talking about the use of the media from the defense side, but also from the prosecutor side. I know you have some knowledge because you were married to the elected prosecutor. And so I guess they're not allowed to talk about a case that's under investigation, right?
Right. So evidently, if it's an open case, and I know that so well because when Dave was with my family home for the holidays, it was an open case about Dave prosecuting a woman who took her child out of the state because she didn't want him to be circumcised. And I guess it was in the news, and my dad was fired up. He was so mad. I don't know where this came from, but when he found out his son-in-law was the one doing this, he waited. I'm telling you, he waited, and it was Thanksgiving or something. I was like, oh gosh. So Dave is at my house for Thanksgiving, and my dad is relentless. He will not stop. He's like, bullshit. You can't talk about it. You're the one doing this to this woman. And he's like, I don't even know why he has all these facts. He was just waiting to have an opportunity to say what he had to say. It was the most awkward.
Well, it's funny you pointing that out because the point is that media coverage can go against the prosecutor, and that actually went against him at a personal level, right, in his marriage and with his in-laws. But there's a bigger case that the whole world heard about that went against the state attorney's office and the elected DA, Dave Ehrenberg at the time, where the defendant was Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots. I was involved in that case in representing, if people know, he went to a massage parlor and he had, had sexual acts with the masseuse and paid for it and so forth and got arrested for that. I represented the owner of the massage parlor. I did not represent Robert Kraft, but share with the audience, Dave got kind of people went against him for prosecuting that case, right?
Oh, yeah. So we were no longer married, but all of a sudden I saw my own name popping up all over the news in Boston, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? They loved me because they hated him.
Right.
So I'm like, Dave, what is going on? Because the crowds in Boston are really liking me because I guess they're just anything they could find or spin into being negative about him. And then he did this to his ex-wife, and then he did this to Kraft and all of these things. And I think, I don't remember verbatim, but, I feel like these prosecutors like to prosecute high-profile cases because they get attention. Now, the other side of it is high-profile people, by nature of the fact of what they do, the spotlight is on them.
I'm
so
sure.
It's harder to fly under the radar, but who's to say what's going on in their mind if they're doing it for the press or doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. But, we talk about politicians love, publicity and media coverage, but as we're pointing out here, it can sometimes go sideways on you. It goes back to my introductory statements when I said that Marc and I really appreciate this episode with you because all our high-profile cases are in the media, and it really affects how we handle our case. It makes it much more complicated. For example, if there's someone charged with a crime who's unknown, and there's someone very famous charged with the same crime, the prosecutor knows that famous person's case is going to be reported in the media. And if the prosecutor gives us on the defense a good deal, a good break, it's going to show up in the media, and the public could get mad at that prosecutor. Why'd you give them such a deal? Because they're famous. But the person, so we have pressure. We actually, I represented John Goodman. That's an example. It was a vehicular homicide. The average sentence at the time that he was being litigated or prosecuted, the average sentence was 8 years. The prosecutor wanted 16 because it was in the media, and they knew the whole world was going to see it and say, why are you going light on this guy? Because he's rich. So they went really, really hard on us. That makes our case harder.
Right.
If John Goodman had been John Smith, who no one had ever heard of, we would have worked through the case and probably had an offer of 8 years. So that media can really affect us. But hopefully, like, I wish I had defended Robert Kraft, because that media that went against the state attorney's office and Dave Ehrenberg would have been helpful for me as the defense attorney, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's very, very powerful, this the world of public relations.
Are you allowed to get information out there off the record and call your media friends and let them know stuff?
Yeah, I think Marc may have a different opinion of off the record. I kind of say I believe in off the record. Marc, am I correct that you don't believe anything's really off the record? I think I remember you saying that once before.
Well, it really depends on your relationship with who you're dealing with. I mean, if it's somebody I don't know or somebody I'm dealing with for the first time, I don't think I would trust the off the record understanding. But if it's somebody like Lynn said, that you develop a relationship with, the reporter likes you, knows that you're going to be a source of information from time to time, so it's a two-way street. In that situation, yeah, I would be willing to trust off the record.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've also found that for us, Marc and I, when we have such good relations with the media, they know that we're always getting high profile cases. So they work with us. They don't ever burn us in the media, because they know if they ever burn us, they're never getting another quote from
sued.
us. What's that?
They're getting sued.
Yeah. Not only are they going to get sued, but they'll certainly never get a quote from us ever again. And when and they know we're going to have future cases that are going to be newsworthy, and so they're usually pretty, working with us.
I have never once experienced anybody going against their word and their source, if it's off the record or anything like that.
Right.
While it has been scary because you're trusting them,
Right.
from their perspective, it's an oath. It's like they really, seemingly, from my understanding, they follow that.
Right.
They really do. And I don't know why, or that it could be against I think it's like a journalistic oath they make or something. I'm not really sure exactly.
It's an honor code.
Or you could deny it, I guess, if they say something else. I mean, I think it would be a disaster for them,
Right.
frankly.
Yeah.
And like, I've worked with one reporter, and he said, when I would talk to him off the record, he's like, I get anonymous packages all the time sent to me. That's how, I guess those people are afraid off the record speaking to him too. So they just send the information to him and he has it.
Right. Yeah.
So then it really is an unknown source.
Sure. I think that goes on a lot, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we kind of move away from the influence with the prosecutor and all, I have to mention a case that we mentioned the other day on an episode. My dad went to Duke Medical School. I was born at Duke while he was in med school. My sister also. So I have Duke Blue Devil blood in me, and I'm a huge Duke fan. And there was a case, again, we mentioned it the other day, where the Duke lacrosse team was arrested for allegedly sexual battery on two ladies. And that prosecutor at the time, the elected DA, his name was Mike Nifong, he used this case in the media because it was an election year, and he understood the power of the media, and he wanted to show that he was going to be tough on these boys who allegedly were accused of raping these two girls, and he thought it would get him elected. But talking about media backfiring on you, he actually committed crimes. He made up evidence. He didn't disclose evidence and things like that. He wound up losing his bar license. He wound up being criminally prosecuted and did some jail. But that's, again, another example of how, no matter which side you're on, misuse of the media or using it, it can go against you.
But in a situation like that, so it's an election year. So now we're mixing politics and, right?
Which you know a lot about.
Right.
Yeah.
He did not. When you are running for office, you need an entire comms team, right?
Yep.
He's a lawyer. He wants to get reelected. That's like, I don't know who strategized with him, because all his skeletons and all that shit needed to be addressed, buried, positioned the right way. A lot of things go into that.
Right.
And that's way too complicated to just go out there and do whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. No, it's
Politics is the most fun.
Sure. I think, we've been running so fast here, and I've been so involved in this conversation, I forgot we have to do a sponsor.
Oh, okay.
We have an interview commercial coming up right now. Viewers, hang in there. It'll just be a moment to thank our sponsor, and then we'll be right back with Lynn Ehrenberg. You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427. All right, we're back with Lynn Ehrenberg. And, I mentioned early when I was doing introduction about how she's great with strategy and so forth. I mean, you're starting to hear a lot about that. And she was just talking about the DA, Mike Nifong, and how, you should have a whole team in place. You really have to do your homework before you come up with your strategies.
Right. You have to do opposition research on the other person and yourself. Mm-hmm. You need to know everything that's going to come out about you and handle it in advance.
Understood.
Be preemptive, because position the right way and knowing what can come out, you can address pretty much anything.
Right.
You just have to really, because nobody's perfect. So your own team does all that research, handles it the best they can, decides how to distribute that information at the right time so that somebody else isn't doing it. Gotcha. Preemptive.
Right. Now, when you're ready to implement a strategy, how do you decide what media groups? I mean, there's local, there's statewide, there's national, internet. Like, how do you radio, TV, news?
You go big. Always. Offer exclusives, because the little guys are always going to take the big guys, right?
Right.
If they're covering it. You don't start with no offense to our county, but I think we're like 38 media market. We're not exactly crushing it here.
Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like might be not, it's around that. Miami is 13, Tampa 7, New York is 1, LA is 2. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to break the news locally here unless they're the only people who care.
Right.
But if you're good at PR, you can spin it and make bigger people care. Mm-hmm. So you go larger and then little ones will pick it up. Or you can say locally, look, we have the New York Times on deck, ready to cover us next week. Do you want to cover this or not? Because obviously their boss would be mad if you're not going to cover it and everybody else is.
That's right.
So you always want to go
big
if you can.
Okay. Right after I graduated college, I think I was 21, 22, I forget how old you are when you graduate college, I co-authored, 22, right? I co-authored a book. It was called College Maximize the Opportunity. Back then, you're going back to 1987, 88, right? There was an article written about our book, and it was published by the Associated Press in the Tampa Tribune, and then they picked it up and it ran all over the country. Does that still exist?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and Tampa's a great place for that, even for television. Right. So if you go on one of the networks there, it's called Daytime TV. It's syndicated all over the country.
Right, so if you just get that one market, it could get picked up all over.
Especially now more than ever with newspapers like consolidating and one company buying a bunch of them, you're in all of them.
Right. So do you have to have specific relationships with the writers or with the producers? I mean, do you call them up, hey, Bill, it's Lynn Ehrenberg, how are you?
So a lot of PR people will tell you that. They'll brag about that. Oh, I know. So, okay, it's twofold. For example, one of my very best friends, she works for Good Morning America. She's had how many pitches from me, right? She will throw me a bone if she can, but she still has a job to do. So Marcy will hear me out, etc. But it's the press you don't know. If you're good at what you do in PR, you know how to craft a story. You know how to pitch them in 5 words. It's almost easier if you don't know them because they haven't heard 75,000 pitches from you. But who's your latest client?
Right, sure.
So, yeah, it's good to know them. Like, of course it is. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do right. And if you know the person who owns the paper or the network, then forget it because they just want money.
Right.
So don't ever talk to them. Never.
Right. So if there's a media outlet that maybe you don't know somebody at, how do you figure out who to get to?
Hire a PR firm.
I know, but how do
how do I do it?
Yeah, how does?
Oh, well, it depends on what the beat is and what the angle is.
Right.
So a client could be interesting to a lifestyle story, a business story, a trade magazine, a community event, legal. It depends on what they do, but you can spin a story in a lot of ways.
Right. I think Marc wanted to ask something. Marc, are you there? Was there? I know you're remote, but I thought I saw you look like you were trying to jump in with a
Yeah,
question. Yeah.
I just to switch the subject completely,
Yep.
but still talking about your area of expertise. I often wonder as a defense attorney, is there really anything that can be done that's going to affect the jury panel positively when you have, like, let's use, for example, P. Diddy's case. I mean, the mountain of negative information that was put in the media daily, true or not, makes it almost impossible to counteract that. So, what do you do in a situation like that?
You go on not hard news, but more like commentary and opinion and TikTok and have people go viral talking about what if this, what they're saying. Does that explain to people what the definition of that charge is and why what he did doesn't apply to that?
So you have surrogates?
And basically have people out there like crime junkies on TikTok who talk about Brian Koberger all the time and present ideas that go viral to why the defendant is not guilty. They still say that about Koberger, and with Diddy, same thing. You have there were people saying, well, just so everybody knows, and this is specifically TikTok, this is what he's charged with. For all of you who are not lawyers and don't know what that means, and people would explain that,
Right.
and then they would explain why, yeah, he looks like an ass. Yeah, he's terrible for this, but did he do fill in the blank? And I think that it was very effective, and it pokes holes and makes you think, and that's the way you get that.
That's a great, great idea. Now, a follow-up question to that is because you've sat on 3 juries, according to what Guy said,
Yeah.
where do you think the average juror now gets their information from? Because back, when I was younger, and more likely to sit on a jury, I would get my information from newspapers or from TV news. What about now?
Yeah,
Not
Mark,
allowed.
I'm glad you asked that because when Lynn was answering the last question, she lost me at TikTok. I'm like, my mind just explodes that is the way.
Oh yeah, it's important.
It's so foreign
How
to
does
me and
that
Mark.
how does that work now with the
Yeah.
people who are sitting on the jury? What do you
We're
think?
not allowed. They make it very clear that when we leave for the day, we can't put the TV on. We can't talk to anybody about it. You don't go on social media. And if you're a rule follower like I am, then you don't see anything. You don't know anything.
Yeah, but before getting
But what about
selected,
in all the time before their perspective? They're not even don't even know they're going to be on the jury. They're just part of the public from which the jury panel gets picked ultimately months and months later. In the meantime, you're getting the clients getting bombarded daily by negative news. Where are these people? What are they listening to? Are these the people who are
TikTok.
listening to the TikTok and the
And you have to
Instagram?
understand, I don't know, you two, your TikTok is great, by the way. So for not knowing much about TikTok, somebody's doing a great job for you.
thank you. That might be Ben, for all I know, our engineer and owner of Podcast Junkies.
Like kudos to you. Really well done. So you have traditional journalists that you would see on normal network television also on TikTok. Somebody's helping them too. And they are weighing in not as hard news journalists, but more like opinion, like Megyn Kelly. She gives her opinion, and TikTok gives you basically the license because you don't have anyone telling you what to do. It's your own show. You can say what you want to say. And she garnered enough credibility, so you listen to her.
Right. So TikTok, is Instagram as powerful? Are there any other platforms that?
I mean, no, I don't think. I mean, the younger you are, and I try to stay young, and I try to, because of my career, stay up to speed with all the younger things. Older people go to Facebook.
Right.
Then we got Instagram. Then we have TikTok. You have to be on TikTok.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, you have to be on TikTok because it's like what you guys do. You see and you hear, and then the algorithm. If you like, you're free to go. you will more likely keep coming up in content like you and stuff like that. And then you have people, say like me or other people that are interested in some case and follow you, and then they're going to weigh in and they like you guys. So they're going to say, it just really can help you, and it's viral like this. That platform can make whatever message you want go viral faster than any other platform.
Right. Amazing. You know, when you talk about going viral, one of the things that often goes viral are mug shots.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, when Rush Limbaugh, who's now deceased, but a very famous, you know, political commentator, was arrested, he knew in advance he was going to be arrested. So before actually he was going to surrender, he went and had his hair done, had makeup done. And if anyone's out there listening, Google his mugshot, and he looks like a rock star. I mean, he really, truly does. But those are things that do go viral. And I know you have a interesting take on when President Donald Trump had his mugshot taken.
Right. He leaned in. You have the T-shirts.
Yeah. With his literally with his mugshot
Yeah.
on it. They sell T-shirts.
Because, I mean, it's amazing what he did. I mean, your average person putting their mugshot on their T-shirt might not work, but you definitely should, if you can in any way. It's not like a glamour shot, but try not to pout and act crazy, because it's going to go online. And say you do a Google search and you do Google images. If you look like a disheveled, angry gremlin, it might pop out. If you're just there, kind of have your pull it together, it's easier to blend. Also, you look less guilty. You're not so angry. Relax if you didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But you're also not super happy and smiling. That's just weird.
Yeah, you know, optics are a big part of it. You know, even during a jury trial, I'm always very cognizant of how a jury's going to perceive when they just look at my client. You know, I don't want them falling asleep. I don't want them twiddling his fingers. You know, I want them to have a piece of paper in front of them and a pen, taking notes, looking dressed nicely and professional.
Yes.
You know?
Well, as a juror,
Yeah.
I've always been told that we can't judge like the police officer, what he says, right?
Right.
Any more than the alleged, criminal?
Right. Yeah, the
defense?
defendant.
Yeah.
No, if someone's...
And I take that. I'm like, okay, I agree with you. I wouldn't want my client fiddling around and looking like a dope either.
Right.
And paying attention.
Yeah.
But technically, it doesn't mean he's guilty if he is doing that.
Right. Yeah.
I follow
can't
the rules as a
deny-
juror.
You can't deny the human nature of opinions.
Do you know how many times I knew if my life depended on it, if I was a gambling woman, they were definitely guilty. But no one cares what Lynn Ehrenberg thinks. I'm a juror and I have a job to do, and I follow the rules. And like, there's this one case that I still think about. I know they were guilty. I know they were, but I said no guilty because you didn't have enough evidence.
And improve it.
The prosecutor did not give me what I needed.
Okay. That's...
Well, it's not innocent. You're never finding the client innocent. You're finding him not guilty, which basically is not proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's better. I like.
But you know, having said that, human nature is such, especially in a long trial, if your client's sitting there looking like a crack addict or you know, a meth addict or just like a mob guy. I mean, I had one case where we completely redressed my client, gave him a whole new outfit, blow dried his hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
that does make sense. But from my 3 experiences,
Right.
the jury, there's been times when I'm like, okay, I am not going to be peer pressured into just whatever they think. But at the same time, I mean, we're not judging him based on what he looks like. Like, what are you telling us here? You're like, it almost works. It's counterintuitive, but it's like, oh, you think we're just going to think because he looks like that or she looks like that, that we're going to make him guilty. Oh, no.
Right. Well, I did have a criminal defense lawyer pull me into a case. They were going to trial, and their client was being prosecuted for being a sexual predator, and he looked creepy. And the only reason this lawyer hired me was for the optics of it. To, he had these glasses that made him look like a creep. He had his outfits, his hair, everything about him. And my role, I just stepped in for the trial to make him look presentable. So the jury didn't sit there for 4 days staring at this guy saying, oh yeah, he's a total creeper. He definitely did this. But as we start to wrap up, I want to just kind of take us to the end of a case, which is where a lot of times with famous people, it's reported the whole time. But with non-famous people, the media covers the arrest, and then they never, ever, and you just mentioned a jury where you found the guy not guilty, So, but they never cover that. And it's my biggest pet peeve is that they don't, ever then say, oh, by the way, 8 months ago, we told you so-and-so got arrested. No one knows who he is, but we reported on it. Hey, we should tell you, by the way, he was found not guilty or charges were dismissed.
Not that interesting.
Right, it's not that interesting. But on the back end, what do you think for like reputation rebuilding? Should they do a press release as we wrap this up? Should someone do a press release at the end? Should they stay out of the media?
Okay, so if I were the person who was my mugshot's all over the internet, right? And then I go to court and then I'm found not innocent, but not
guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Then I would definitely, if I had the resources, hire a PR agency or the lawyer distribute some news and somehow, because you could put it on the wire. You could figure out how to. I don't know how many people are going to care about it. He could start a dog charity and go with that, fix his reputation. If it's even that fixed, because the news cycles are fast.
Right.
They really are. So people think they're more important than they are.
True.
And even the famous people do. On to the next.
That's a good point. Just
unless you have somebody against you,
right?
And they make your mugshot go viral, which I have done before.
Of course you have. All right, I think that's a great point to wrap up on. You've been an awesome guest. I love this conversation.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot. How about you, Marc?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
in fact,
good.
I'm going to keep your number on my
speed dial.
Rolodex.
Rolodex.
Okay.
Love that.
Well, thank you for having
my
me.
age, right?
Well, we thank everybody for tuning in to another great episode today with Lynn Ehrenberg. So honored to have you here. So thank you, Lynn.
Thank you,
Lynn. And until the next time, ladies and gentlemen,
you're free to go. Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Marc and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fronstin and Marc Nurick and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.